Welcome to the Ed Answer Key, the podcast where in the time it takes to complete hall duty and attendance, we embark on an educational adventure for both teachers and families. So whether you're a seasoned educator or a family navigating the school system, buckle up for the Ed Answer Key.
Poverty. How is poverty affecting education? I mean, I work in a school that's over 80% free or reduced lunch, so that means they're at or below the poverty level. Socioeconomic status is a huge factor. Poverty can be an actual traumatic experience with the change of the economy. I mean, I think it's absolutely huge. And even on the employee side, so we have individuals that their purpose is to mitigate the effects of poverty, whether it be resources for the family, whether it be kids coming in and being talked about by other students.
Because they don't have.
They just don't have, water shut off, so no brushing of teeth, no showers or whatnot. And, middle school kids can be very blunt.
Ruthless.
So, as far as mitigating those things, I think poverty is, it's a huge factor.
Well, we're talking about poverty and generational poverty. I mean, the school we work at, that's huge. So, like, teaching and trying to help the adults in their lives to gain access to things is huge, too, to try to change a trajectory for a family. Well, I mean, it's part of their basic needs. So, on a daily basis, I would say you hear from probably, I would say 1 to 2 a day about something related to their impoverished situation. Whether it's clothing or, living situation or jobs or food. I mean, it's just incredible. So that's a daily thing we run into.
What a huge culture shock it was for me growing up in a very different, demographic as the kids that I teach in. And
how so? What do you mean different?
I mean, just the opportunities that I had because of, more money, because I'm white, because, all of these things, because my parents had jobs that they could actually be at home when I was at home, and we would read bedtime stories and we would go to museums and things that, my students, a lot of them don't get to experience. And that was a huge culture shock when I first started teaching, and something that I had to get over some biases, and I had to really reflect on judgments that I was making. And now 12 years later, everyone should work in poverty. They need to be experienced, they need to be surrounded by that, because it makes you a better teacher. It makes you a better human, just to understand and, to get around, people that you're not used to, or you didn't grow up like, I grew up in this little bubble. It was a big culture shock. But I think the biggest thing for me is how expensive it is to be poor. And how so many of our students and so many of our families, and now it's like, I get it. It's basic survival.
Yeah. I think you bring up a point as far as like empathy, being able to see that. I learned so much from working where I'm working right now by seeing like parents when I'm trying to call them at work, or I'm calling them when I have a free moment, maybe 20 minutes or whatever during lunch. I'm trying to call them and it's during the day, or I'm calling them before I go home and that's like at 4:30 and they're not answering the phones. Well, I wonder why, because hopefully they're at work at that time. What it's helped me to do is to realize that no matter who it is, I believe that our parents, those families, send their children to school in the best way that they possibly can. Yeah. And they just have a lot more, I think they have more significant challenges to have to deal with because of the poverty issue.
Well, I feel like, too, when you're talking about the parents, they have high expectations for their kids. They want them to be successful. And I think it's important that teachers uphold those high expectations, because a lot of times I see teachers kind of having like a charity mindset, and their expectations aren't high, and that's not beneficial to the student. So as teachers, we got to think about, okay, their parents are doing the best, and we need to make sure we're doing
We're
our
matching,
best
right.
and holding them accountable, just like we would if it were in a fluent school or student or whatever.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, to me, it's hard. Just coming from poverty myself, growing up, and then sometimes that lack of empathy when I see teachers now and how they react to certain situations with students that are going through that. Right. Part of me wishes there were more training.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially if you're working in a school that's got X percentage of students that are living in poverty, to see that, right? In a perfect world, to have folks that are coming from different worlds,
Totally.
right? And instead of having so much of a culture clash when they get to teach their kids.
And for teachers that are coming from different worlds, they need to not be afraid to, be open to that and have those conversations with their kids and, their students. And there was a good period of time where I just kind of shut down and I wouldn't share anything with my students about my personal life because it felt almost like, well, I can't relate to you, and anything I say about the way I, grew up or opportunities I had, it's just going to come across as like bragging or, and so I just shut down completely. And after those couple years, I realized, well, that doesn't work at all because they want to know, and I want to know about them, and they want to know about me, and we're going to form a relationship, and that difference that we see, that's something to be embraced, and just getting in their life and understanding like what are your interests in, and what is it like to be you, and what is it like to go home, and what kind of responsibilities do you have, and they want to tell you all about that. And that's powerful to, build that relationship piece.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that, like, thinking about poverty as a whole, but also is such an individualized thing. Like every single situation, just like anything else, is individual. And just thinking about like what you were saying, Ron, it's like you have these trainings, but they're like this one size fits all at that moment. But we need something more consistent because there's a lot of change and there's a lot of different situations that happen. So.
Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of the Ed Answer Key. Your support means the world to us. Be sure to stay in the loop about upcoming topics by downloading our free podcast companion at www.edanswerkey.com. So until next time, class dismissed.